Today is Monday, May the 20th. We are expecting a phone call, so we're going to jump down a little bit on our agenda so that we can accommodate the phone call. But looking over the agenda, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
We do have a quorum, don't we?
Five? Mm-hmm.
We do now.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say five, we have five here. Yes, perfect, thank
Hey.
you.
Well, I don't vote, so.
Great.
Trying to help somebody get jumped off outside.
I'll have to turn it on.
Thank you, sir.
You want to jump there?
If you'll sign in, and I have us on, we're expecting our phone call in 2 minutes, so we're gonna jump down. We just had a motion and a second to approve the agenda. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we'll just wait for this phone call. And if you don't mind, Sheila, taking the lead since you've been in contact with this individual,
Okay.
greatly appreciate that.
Joining us will be Stephen Thompson. He's the president of Burris Thompson and Association, compensation and talent management consultants in Thompson Station, Tennessee.
Awesome.
And he is supposed to call in 2 minutes. It was the conversation you wanted to have with him. He's agreed to join us by phone, and that would be nice. Mr. Thompson?
Yes,
Hi, this is Sheila Prophet. How are you?
good. How you doing?
I'm good. You have been joined in with our pay and benefits ad hoc meeting, so I have introduced you already.
Okay,
And,
good.
and your title is the president of that company, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. Would you mind telling us, we have a few questions for you, just a little bit about what you do?
Sure, sure. So I've been doing this HR consulting thing since 1994. Prior to that, I was director of comp and benefits for Dollar General Corporation. So I kind of grew up in the private sector, but I've been doing this consulting thing for a long time. And right now, 100% of our work is city and county government. So, know quite a bit about local government. Did a pay study for Coffee County in 2013. I think it ended up in 2014. Some of you may have been around then. I think, is Heather there? I think Heather might have been there. I know Mariana was. So anyway, what happened then, just kind of from my perspective, we take a pretty collaborative approach. So we met with department heads up front. We did our thing, pulled our numbers, came up with recommendations, met with the department heads individually again, and everybody seemed to be pretty good shape. Everybody was pleased with where things were going. But the one problem was a lot of people their salaries were really low, like more than 20% below market. So a lot of the money to be spent on the new pay plan was going to go to those people at the expense of the 15-year person who was just going to get a normal quote-unquote increase. Whereas the person who showed up yesterday, brand new hire the day before, was getting thousands of dollars because they were way low. So what happened is the people who have been there 15 or 20 years felt slighted. This wasn't fair. I've been here all this time. I'm not getting a big increase, and these people are. So, but from my perspective, what they failed to do was take in the big picture. Yeah, they were more or less paid okay relative to the market, whereas the other folks, the 20% who were really low, were not. So that's where we stepped them on. Anyway, long story short, that whole thing blew up because there was too many people complaining, and as I understood it, Sheriff and EMS did implement the pay plan, but nobody else did. So anyway, so we do a lot of cities and counties. I've done everything small from Trousdale, Hartsville, Trousdale to Smith. We're working on Cheatham right now. We did Murray, Wilson, Sumner, Sevier, Williamson, Rutherford, and I've worked with cities around you folks too, Manchester, Tullahoma, and Columbia. So we have a pretty good handle on the market. So typically what we do, I'll just kind of go through a real quick summary of a class comp project. We do a little kickoff meeting with all the department heads, typically elected officials, talk about what we're doing and get some input. Then we meet individually with each department head, elected officials, talk about their jobs and their concerns. We go pull our numbers from 2 databases, typically a set of other counties and cities that's in good competitors for, in this case, Coffee County. We also have a general business and industry database. Whenever somebody leaves the employment of Coffee County, they're just as likely to go to distribution or retail or financial institution or distribution or manufacturing or a contractor as they are to Bedford County or Murray County or somebody else in the government side. So we usually have 2 numbers for each job, a public sector number, private sector number. That's the average. Come up with an average for each job, and then we build a pay structure around that, typically comprised of pay grades with, let's say, a set of steps. I think we had 14 steps proposed for you guys originally, and we usually build that around that market average. So, the market average represents somebody who's in the job 5 to 7 years. So we would set typically step 5 or 6 or 7 maybe would be the market step, so to speak. We'd build some steps below that, and then steps above that. We'd have a pay structure. So I think if we had 14 steps, maybe step 6 was the market step. Step 1 was where we typically start the minimally hired and minimally qualified individual, and then there'd be a top out, typically around 20% above that market step. Sometimes we use ranges instead of steps. In fact, I think at one point we had proposed ranges for the top 4 grades for you folks and steps for the remaining. I think we had 9 grades below that, so something like that. So sometimes we have pay ranges instead of steps, gives you more flexibility, whereas steps kind of manage pay for you. Some supervisors, managers, department heads like that. They don't want to make decisions, so let's have somebody else make those. And so the step plan kind of manages pay for you as long as the elected officials fund it. It kind of has a life of its own because, it's on black and white. Go from here to here to there each year as long as you have meet some minimal performance expectations. So that's, in a nutshell, what we do, and we'll work with, clients typically to figure out how to implement it. Sometimes it's all at once. Sometimes it's over time, maybe a year or 2. We also will look at if pay compression is an issue. A lot of the people hired yesterday are making the same amount as somebody who's been in the job for 10 years. That's a problem. So we'll help figure out how can we spread out their salaries a little bit based on time in job and possibly time with the county. Time in job, I think, being the more important factor. And that becomes, how much of that you can do is pretty much driven by budget and how bad things are. Sometimes when I do this, there's just a handful of people that need some sort of tenure-based adjustment to get their salary more in line with where their job tenure suggests it should be. In other cases, it's like 1/3 of the workforce or more that has, there's a lot of pay compression. Everybody's kind of bunched up at the bottom. So we'll spread them out a little bit. But again, how much you can do is budget. So that's pretty much what we do. 100% of our work right now is public sector, so county and city governments. I've had private sector clients as recently as like 4 years ago, and I guess I've done some small stuff here and there for some private sector clients, but bulk of our work is public sector stuff.
That's a really good summary and a lot of information. So.
Yeah, I might have gone too fast. But,
No.
If you have any questions, let me know about that. And then, I think Sheila and I were talking, this maybe best is just a questions and answers kind of thing. I'm willing to talk as long as you need to help you out with this. So,
What local counties, this is Sheila, what local counties have you done a pay study for?
So we've done Murray, Sumner, Rutherford, Smith, Trousdale, Hartsville, Trousdale, Unified Government. We're working on Cheatham right now. I've done Sevier out in East Tennessee. I did Madison County, Jackson. So we've done we do more cities, I guess, than counties, but the county projects are pretty big. Usually lots of employees and lots of jobs. So, but those are I guess you consider the local ones.
Mr. Thompson, this is Tim Stubblefield.
Uh-huh.
I'm commissioner for the county.
Yeah.
But I'm retired from the city of Tullahoma Fire Department.
Okay.
And I was there when you did the study. at
Okay.
Tullahoma. And I think that went into effect maybe 2 years or 3 years before I retired. I'm not sure, but
Okay, so because we just did one for them last year, or I guess kind of ended up last year, the year before, and then I had done the original study with them like 8 years ago. So
right. So
you
it was
talking about
8
the most
years
recent
ago.
one, or
No, I was on the 8-year one.
okay,
One you did
the
8 years
recent
ago,
one.
that's
Okay,
the one
yeah,
I was
yeah.
on, and then I retired like 3 or 4 years after that.
Okay, got it.
So, in order for when you do these studies, and in my, you said you could spread it out. You don't have to buy into it right fully up front, but it only works if you buy into it at 100%, right? I mean, if you just select,
Yeah.
you can't pick and choose. You have to fully commit to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's this often comes up. Well, Steve, we can't really afford the whole $3 million. So what do we do? So you have several choices. I do have some clients, a couple that actually decided to, okay, we're going to implement it for half the workforce this year, and we're going to implement it for the other half next year. They pulled it off. There were there's obviously some problems with that. You have half the workforce is a little disappointed, to put it mildly. But they were able to communicate it, and everybody was sure they were going to implement it for the rest of the group the next year. So they were comforted enough that it was okay. That's one choice. You could try to implement it over a couple of years. So let's say we'll do 90% of, let's say the total increase is going to cost 9% of budget. We'll do 5% this year and then 4% next year. And that's one way to do it. The problem, of course, is that the market's moving. So, you might be 9 shy this year, but if you do 5, you think you got 4 left over, but you're really going to end up with 7 because the market's going to move another 3. So it's it's challenging. But anyway, you could split the cost over a couple of years. Sometimes you'll do July, January, split it over 2 fiscal years or something like that. So those are the main choices in terms of trying to implement it over time. But the problem with not doing it all the way is, well, the market's going to move, and so it's going to take even more to catch up again the next year. So probably makes sense to try to do it as much as you can, as fast as you can. Of course, it depends on budget and how far off you are and all those other things.
Right. And I think I came on in 2014 as commissioner.
Uh-huh.
And I think at the time that you did that study, we was not sitting too well financially, I don't think.
Yeah, that was part of the problem. In fact, it was nip and tuck whether it were, so part of my concern was, Mary Ann talked about this, they may not go for this at all because it's going to cost too much. So we thought we were right on the cusp of the commission to say, well, we can't afford this, we're not doing it. Right. So we tried to temper the whole thing so that we thought it was doable, and she had the numbers, so she said it was doable, but we definitely were not doing as much as we wanted to or needed to get everybody up to speed in terms of salary. So, but we thought if we tried to push for anything more, it was just going to get blown out of the water completely. Right. And as it turns out, as I understand it, just EMS and fire implemented it as we had recommended, and everybody else they didn't, and that was that. So, anyway.
Okay. Thank you. That's my question. Anybody else?
Okay.
I have a question. So we were in the step and grade, and I think you mentioned that you could do steps or you could do ranges. But this is my question. How do you keep up with inflation so we do not get caught on this if we did a step and grade? How do we not get caught to where you're locking people into this step and grade for a period of 8 years, or how does that work?
Okay, so we tell our clients that the pay structure, which is the set of grades and steps, or grades and ranges, needs to be reviewed right now, probably every couple of years, because the market's been moving pretty quickly. So what that entails is you're going to have to, you don't hire me to do a big pay study every 2 years, but either yourselves or I can help try to figure out, okay, how much do we need to move the steps or ranges this year to make sure they remain competitive? And so I argue you need to track the cost of labor, which is different than the cost of living. But as an employer, if you're trying to compete with talent, you need to make sure your pay structure tracks the labor market. Not necessarily the cost of living, but at least the labor market. And 10 years ago, that was okay. Cost of living and cost of labor were both about 3% a year. There's maybe 2.5% for labor and 3% for inflation. That was about it. So it didn't make much difference. As long as you were in the 2.5-3% range in terms of your total increases, whether steps or ranges or whatever, you were fine. What's happened the last couple of years, and some employers I think have overreacted maybe a little bit or didn't know, but we've got a lot of going on in Middle Tennessee here. But normally, you would adjust. Let's say you had your steps, you'd adjust your steps what the labor market is moving. So if the labor market moves 4%, you would have to move your steps 4%. So people would get the step plus the 4%. And that way, if you do that periodically, get your steps, keep them up to snuff with the market, you keep pace. But you have to be careful that you don't get hooked into the notion that we're going to match that CPI number that people are reading in the newspaper. You maybe do that once or twice. I think a lot of employers did that coming out of the pandemic. It was a kind of a triple whammy. You were coming out of the pandemic, couldn't hire anybody. Inflation hit, and we couldn't hire anybody. So people kind of overreacted and did 15% increases in the 2020, 2021 timeframe kind of thing. And the whole market here in Middle Tennessee was just crazy. And it filtered down your way a little bit, I'm sure, but it was really nuts up here. So, but they were reading 9% CPI in the newspaper. Oh, we got to match CPI 9%. Yeah, you can maybe do that, but that's probably not sustainable. When we had, I'm dating myself here, but when we had inflation running 13, 16% in 1980-ish, nobody had pay increase budgets of 13 or 16%. My first mortgage was 16%, but nobody got I guess 14%. Nobody got pay increases that high. It was the pay increase budgets were running about maybe 8%, kind of like half. So I keep telling people, do not tell your employees we're going to match the CPI, because long term you probably can't do that. It's not sustainable for a number of different reasons, and so don't plant that seed. So I say track the cost of labor, but you do need to adjust the pay structure every couple of years to make sure it's not falling behind. Because if you just put it in place and let it sit there for 8 years, people will move through the steps, but your new hire rates, if you don't move your step one or a pay range minimum, if you leave it sit there, it's going to be really uncompetitive in 2 or 3 years, let alone 10 or more. It's just not going to be competitive, and I think that might have happened to the plan before I got there anyway. So that your people are moving. The people that are in the steps, they're kind of going along. So they're not in too bad a shape. But if they're just getting a step, they're not getting the labor market movement. So they're not keeping their salaries aren't really keeping track with the labor market. So you fall behind.
Okay. anything.
How long does it, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go
How long does it take to do a salary study typically?
So, like I said, we take a pretty collaborative approach. That's the only way I know how to make it work, because it's not my pay plan, it's yours. So we need your help to figure out how to make it work and make it fit your needs. So that means, we meet with department heads a couple times in the project, and so it can take as little as 3 months, maybe. Sometimes it stretches out. It depends on how much churn there is in the data, and how much we did Wilson County. I think it took us 9 months, and they had a whole host of issues. I mean, we met with their EMS people like 8 times. So it can vary. Depends on how big the problems are. Obviously, the big organizations take longer, but it's somewhere between 3 and 5 months typically.
And I guess the big question for me is, what kind of cost can we expect for something? Just ballpark. Do you have a number that you can give us?
Well, yeah. So how many employees do you have? Refresh my memory. Do you know overall?
About 402.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. It was in the 300-400 range. Okay, so I'm gonna ballparkish. We're probably talking 25,000, 35,000, somewhere in there. That's probably a kind of a ballpark number. There's some optional steps that sometimes we have employees fill out job questionnaires. If the job descriptions are not in good shape, a good thing to do would be have employees fill out job questionnaires where they talk about what they do and skills required, that kind of thing. So that adds a little extra time. Oftentimes the biggest challenge is getting data from the benchmark. So if you want to get data from Bedford and Canada, whatever counties you're looking at, many of them did respond to our survey that we conducted fourth quarter 2023. So we have fresh data for a lot of them, but there may be some that didn't. So we have to go get data. Sometimes that's like pulling teeth, so it could take a month just to get that done. We can do some other things in the meantime, but still, that's takes some time. It's a process, and it's best to not rush it. I tell people all the time, it's better to get it right than meet some arbitrary deadline, because if it's not right, it's not going to work. So, and we're talking about people's pay, so it gets pretty sensitive, and you have to make sure you're treating everybody fairly. And you're not going to please everybody 100%, so there's going to be some pushback here and there, and you have to deal with that. So it kind of depends, but 3 to 5 months is probably a fair estimate, and 35,000 is probably ballpark.
So when you perform one, or you do one and you turn it in, and say the county or city fully funds it, you said you came back later and did another one for Tullahoma. So is that something that you recommend when you do that, to like update it every?
Yeah. So here's the way. So most of our clients we have continuing relationships with. So usually what happens, I'll just kind of give you the typical situation, is we'll do a pay study year one, and then we'll help kind of update the pay structure the next year, the year after. Every year or 2 years somewhere we'll help them. And it's not a big deal. We typically just take a snapshot of a handful of jobs and say, hey, the market appears to have moved 4%, so you need to move your steps or ranges 4%, and then we'll give you some information on what employee pay increase budgets are, and maybe you need to make sure your total increase is somewhere around, let's say, 5, and so If you've got 2% steps plus a 4% market adjustment, you're fine. So we'll help with that. And then somewhere around year 5, year 7, somewhere between years 5 and 7, we're typically, hey, Steve, we need to kind of do a recalibration. We kind of need to do a redo just to make sure everything's up. Some jobs have changed. We got some new jobs, so we're not sure this is exactly is where we need to be. So we'll kind of redo the pay study. It's not quite as time-consuming or costly because we've been there and we've done that, so we kind of know and kind of leverage some of our prior experience. But it is kind of a redo. And then, usually some adjustments come out of that too. If you've been updating the plan all along, then and we've done a pretty good job of that, then the redo it's kind of a confirmation more or less of what you've been doing. But sometimes if you haven't been updating the pay plan periodically or budgetary woes hit you and you can't do something a couple of years or whatever, at the redo you find, we're a little bit behind, and so there's a little bit of a price tag to catch back up again. But so it kind of depends on what happens.
So you have to stay with it. You can't say I'm just one and done and come back 10 years later and say, we need another one.
No. Most of the time, it's I'm talking to the client every year. We're talking about what to do, and
Right.
and I don't, typically they tell me when they need to have a redo. I don't tell them.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we did Cookville. It was 10 years. I think. On the other hand, Germantown does it. A couple of cities do it every 2 years. They do kind of a pretty big redo every couple of years, 2 or 3 years. So it kind of depends on most of those are growing cities or counties where a lot of change is going on and the jobs are getting bigger. Job of Parks and Rec director 3 years ago bears no resemblance to what it is now because of all the growth and new facilities, So you have to do a kind of a recalibration, I call it, to catch up to where the organization is now versus where it was 3 or 5 years ago, whatever.
Right. Okay.
We're good?
Well, I don't know if there's any other questions, but
I think so.
yeah.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate you taking this time to explain it to us, and we're just
Sure.
beginning to look at the objectives that we've been given, and we're just trying to gather as much information as we can. So I appreciate your
Yeah, okay.
time. Thanks for joining us.
Sure, appreciate it, no problem.
All right. Have a good day.
Hey, thanks.
Goodbye.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll go back up to the top of the agenda. We've approved the agenda. Public comments. Anybody have any comments?
I do.
Yes, ma'am, please join us.
Come up to the table.
Please.
Okay, so as Heather sitting here, I know Heather knows about at least 3 salary studies in the last 10 years.
I know of the one.
Okay, there's actually been like 3. The state done one, then I thought we paid for 2. Or-
We paid for one that I'm aware of, and that was with Thompson.
Okay. And the way I understood it was that survey didn't come out to the way our budget and finance and our commissioners wanted to handle things, meaning that our people were underpaid. So what I see, you having this conversation with him to do another one is it's wasteful. Because we we know the market. The managers in their department pay what people are being paid. We have 95 counties. It's real easy to find out. And the state also prints, do they not? You have a printout of what everybody's making. So why, I ask of you to really think about that. Why would we go pay $35,000 for something that we're not going to use? We know our people are underpaid. We need to get a hold, you all need to get a hold of the state's survey to show you what these people are making in their positions. And then you have to rely on somebody like me, the official who's been here 10 years. I've watched pay studies not work. I've watched pay the people a raise every other year not work. I've watched give them 2 or 3% if they get anything not work. Last year was the best it had been since I had been here with the 4%. And then our folks, as regular county employees, never got any kind of a pay in a payment for COVID and what they did. I know the courts weren't in, and so the commissioners thought we weren't at work. My team was at work every day. We were on the curb and at a window, and we had the people in. We took a lot of risk to make sure the documents were recorded every day. I know the trustee was in. I know the assessor was in. I know that because we're all there working together every day. But they did get that little payment, and y'all know what the figure is, right? Heather? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, these employees of our county, they're very aware that over in the school system, just a couple of rooms down, those folks got like 4 or 5 COVID, they called them COVID bonuses, but I would never call it a bonus. I would call it a work overload payment. But we have not been doing what we needed to do. And at this point, we made a great step last year. And at this point, I can't see us by no means going under that 5% that Judd recommended. He had a plan in his mind of how this was bringing them up. But the thing I want to discuss is when you give everybody the same raise, then you have some people that are ahead, and most of our people are below. So then those people are going to continue to stay below. So it takes a lot of creativity for each department head and each official to say, this one and this one is this low. We need to bring them up to this. And you get those people caught up. Plus you still, on your achievers, need to reward them a salary increase for each year. We are not in the time to start training, and I've got 4 full-time, and now I've got one just asked me about going part-time because she can make as much as she makes going part-time 3 days a week and not pay a benefit package and still bring home the same amount of money. So people are smarter these days. The employees have figured out ways that will enhance them. And if we're going to retain them, and I know what our retention rate is, it was out the roof. I come to you at the table with 4 years of experience with Ronstad. I went to the Ronstad University. We studied salaries and payrolls, and I worked with these manufacturers that some of them brand new from the ground up out at the park. I'm not just blowing wind. And when I sent out an email to, I think, at least 10 people, I've sent it out twice. I sent it out again today. And I don't hear anything from anybody, and I'm handing over constructive state information that gives you a heads up of where Coffee County's registrar's office is with the mortgage and transfer tax, which put us like we were 25 of bringing in the most money out of 95. That means we have that much activity in that office. We're not a Bedford County. We are not a Bedford County. We are not a Franklin County. We are not a Grundy County. We are an interstate traffic industrial county in Middle Tennessee that is climbing up the ladder. And And I hoped that would give you, and I put stars. What I'm looking at is this right here. I hope y'all have seen it. I did it in color even. I hope that, yeah, I see Holly has it. I put stars by the counties that I know are comparable to the registers, which is going to be comparable to the trustee, which is going to be comparable to the assessor down on that wing. Should be with all of them. I don't know about the sheriff's office. And then I put another sheet in here where I guess one of the most worrisome on me was when I found out 3 of my people were HUD housing qualified. Guys, and ladies, we've got, women on their own, working and head a household, which, their pay shouldn't differ because of what their household is. But we should be paying them enough that they're not HUD qualified for housing. Just like, and I'll give you an example how far behind we are. You've got a person with 3 children. To get that mother who's working for our county, woman, out of HUD housing, it would be $44,650 is what she makes to qualify. So, I've talked recently, and I'm going to be going again next week to meet with Rutherford County. They're telling me that I'm way behind. Everybody wanted to say that I brought my people in way too high. No, I did not. I brought them in below market, and no, I did not bring them in at $10 an hour as everybody asked me to, because their qualifications did not suit $10 an hour. I brought them in at a market range. I did a study of 5 counties, 6 counties. I've repeated that twice. It puts a lot of work on everybody I asked to do that in the other counties. So I'm not asking them to do it again this year. I've got the charts. I have provided the charts. I have provided what the salaries have been in my office and what the commissioners have approved for the total dollar of the registrar's office all along for salaries. And, we've been right in there with them, making what they were making in 2004. The office just now in the last year got the 4th full-time employee. They'd always had 4 employees for most of the years until that last year before the registrar knew they were going to retire. And so they didn't rehire and people fell off the train. And so that left me with 1 part-timer. So you can see that different things cause different scenarios. So when I come in as an official and I have 1 part-timer, what have I got to do? I got to hire people. I don't even know how many to hire. So we stayed understaffed until last year. I tell you this because I think it's very important. I hope that when I'm gone, that history doesn't repeat itself. I hope that we can move forward and take care of these employees. I know that my opinion is not well liked in the higher up of command, and I ask each of you to form your own opinion and stick to your values and your opinions for this county. Do not let somebody challenge you to agree with them. Do what's right. And that's the only way we're going to get past this, because what I see, sometimes I feel like you all, the commissioners, don't have the flexibility or the freedom to come and visit with us, to come and talk with us, to find out where it's at, and us show you our payroll, us go over the job descriptions. Everybody has job descriptions. Let's get this clear. CTAS provides those, and they're very accurate. I've only had to add a couple things. There's so much that we haven't never done that doesn't cost $1 that will help us make the right decision. And let me see what else I had. Salaries for the state. the state did approve 13% increase this past year for 2025. And there was a 2% cost of living in that too. No, that was for the judges. I'm sorry. But you can see 13%. You know, we had an auditor come into the county about 3 weeks ago that asked one of my staff members, hey, is the county giving y'all a good raise on this next budget? And she said, no, not that we hear. Donna's trying to talk to them. And she said, well, I hate that because the state did well, and I would expect the counties to be following through. So, again, the information's out there. We have the web now. Employees can see right where they're at, where their benchmark is. We have a lot of opportunity coming down the track for other jobs. We have the base that's going to have a lot of administrative people. I'm sure Holly knows about that. And we have the mega site. I'm sure it's going to get filled, and we're going to have a lot of job opportunities for our county employees out there as well. But I'm here. I have a lot of information. Every year at budget time, I've come forward like this, and sometimes it hasn't been pretty because sometimes things have been said to me that are not very nice. And that's not the intent I have. That's not what I want to do. My heart is pure. My heart is wanting us to do the right thing. I have a couple of my employees that are doing good on their salary. But I'm not really here just about my office. I'm here for the county employees. As an official, I was elected by the citizens of this county to work for all the citizens of this county. And that's what I hope you all think about when you're in this seat and you're trying to come up with a plan for the salaries, is think about who placed you here. And all those people, every day in my office, you may think this is corny. John knows, I look out the windows and I think, I've done it for you today. I've done this, I've done that. I've done as much as I can do. I didn't come in to get a cushiony job. Didn't even know what it paid until 2 weeks prior to the election. I thought it paid around $42,000. So I come with you with just open mind and heart that we don't let anybody take the decisions coming out of this committee and rule them. I've already been asked to get over it, and I'm not going to get over it, okay? The county employees they are what makes me. They're what makes John. They're what makes Sheila. If we didn't have them, the office would be in very poor shape. And every day we have to be at the top of the game. Every day things rely on us to get done for these constituents, whether it's they're selling their property, they're bringing a plat in to be recorded, a loan's coming through, releases are coming through, POAs are coming through. We have to be ready for them and get as much done in that day as we can. So that's all. If y'all have any questions about how we look at our payroll or anything that would help you. No?
No, but just to your point, we're not necessarily looking to have another salary study completed. We were just calling and asking some questions in the name of due diligence.
Yeah.
Right, and I wouldn't
We're not-
support a salary study unless
25,
we've.
35,000, right?
Right. I wouldn't
Agreed.
support that unless we unless the commission committed to fully funding it.
All finance, right.
So,
I hope we don't go there with the commission to put that up to a vote. I hope that doesn't happen because there's a lot of misinformed information there about that doesn't work. We've seen it not work. The other thing that doesn't work is step and grade. Sorry, that did not work. It absolutely did not work. So I hope we try to come out of this going up this hill with a different gears of items that will work to get us better off, to get us there. But I am proud that my employees work where they do. I think they have a good job. I think my employees are very high skilled. It's not that John's folks and my folks, as said before within the commission, and Beverly's folks all do the same thing. It is absolutely different world, different skill set, okay? Every office is a different skill set. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to say anything? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. And,
Let me ask you a thing.
please.
So the question that I had was, I think there was discussion about longevity, compensation. And I guess the question I had was should we consider bringing the employees up to a desired level before we look at some type of longevity pay?
Well, the longevity is an incentive to, for the people that have been here. I guess it rewards the people that's been here for a while, and it's incentive to retain. But it's not gonna have nothing to do with what we're, bringing people up or anything like that. This is just
In addition to.
an
incentive.
addition. This is
And just
the
an
longevity is
incentive.
an addition.
Okay.
So it don't have nothing to do with what we're talking about here. It's more like an addition to what we're doing.
I think, Sheila, you mentioned it earlier in the discussion. Nobody knows your people better than you do, or maybe Tim mentioned that each department head knows their own people. One thing that I've done in my department, and I know that Donna's done in her department, is look at the market labor, the cost of labor. And I think Jim Thompson talked about the cost of labor. And looking at the consumer price index and inflation, and those are some things that have really hit our employees hard. For many, many years, the county utilized the step and grade program, which never kept up with the cost of inflation. It might have kept up with the cost of labor because we failed, or the county failed to pay the employees a desired level of compensation. And
And that was never updated.
no,
Once that
but
step and grade was out, I mean, there's like, I remember looking at 3 different papers or 3 different sheets of step and grade and trying to figure out which one goes to what. You know, which step and grade goes to which department. But even at that, it never was upgraded. It just ran its course, and nobody ever went back to say, maybe we need to upgrade this and make it. And don't get me
Right.
wrong, I'm not for step and grade, but I'm just saying that was, to me, that was one of the downfalls of that.
maybe the responsibility of compensation should be on the official, or if you will, the department head, and let them design what their results are, or what their studies are, based on what employees should be paid on their level of work. In other words, Sheila, you know each person in your office, what they do and what their level of work is, what their skill is. And then, you know, at one time, the legislative committee drew up an evaluation sheet. And the evaluation sheet was a tool that was going to be used for compensation. And it was real simple. You know, is the employee on time? Is the employee, do they do a full day's work, or other characteristics that you wanted to list? And in those characteristics, then that would give you a point of contact as whether or not they were suitable to be increased in their salary. So I think maybe that responsibility should be put back on the department heads or the officials, either one, and let them come to this committee and say, hey, here's what we've done, here's the goals that we set, here's what we achieved, and based on market condition, based on goals, based on results, this is what we feel like we should pay our employees. And if you compare that to the market outside of government, the businesses and so forth, then it would be compatible because we do have a problem with retention. I mean, we do have, Heather, what are the retention results?
I haven't looked at them recently, but, I mean, it stays about the same,
So do we move a lot of people in or do we move a lot of people out? Or
both in and out.
okay. So if we had a program where each employee knew what the goal was and knew what the results were supposed to be, and they would be rewarded for those, would that help retention or?
Possibly.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess my concern is where we need to try to fix the initial compensation problem as opposed to anything down the road. And a long-term incentive is nice, but if we don't retain that employee, the long-term incentive is not gonna be very effective.
It is our goal to find a way ahead to do both.
Sure.
That is our goal, and I think we may be moving slowly, but we are giving it our all.
Well, a lot of counties, I think Rutherford County had like a 15 or 17% increase in pay, and I think that Lincoln County last year had like a 10 or 12% increase in pay. And I've been here since 2014. 4% last year was the most I had ever seen. You know, there were years that the thought process was, we'll balance the budget on the backs of the employees, and nobody gets a raise this year. And I think those days are gone. I think most of the commissioners now are interested in the employees' compensation. I think they're interested in retaining employees. I think they want to see things move forward. I think most of that thinking is gone, and I don't know that 10 or 12% is out of the question this year for the employees. I know our investment results have been tremendous. I know the county's growing. I think there were probably at least 3,000 permits in Manchester City last year. So your income on sales tax revenue has been consistent. I think we have the funds and the availability to do it. It's just a matter of taking a leap and moving forward. And I think what we'll find, Henry Ford, when he was, and I'm going to go back long before your time, Sheila. Henry Ford in 29 or 32, when he was manufacturing automobiles, he said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and pay my employees because I want every employee driving a Ford. So he bit the bullet, and he paid his employees more than any of the rest of the manufacturers, and all of them went out and bought Fords. So that was great for the economy at that time. And I do like to see an increase in sales tax. Thank you.
Did you work there, John?
No, I
He's
didn't.
on the assembly line, I'm not sure.
Can I add a couple things real quick? On Henry Ford situation, how he did that. Let's all remember that our county wins when our county employees can afford to live. They can buy cars, they can shop at Walmart, they can shop at the gift stores around the square. I mean, can you imagine when you go down the payroll? I hope you've went and looked at the payroll and see what they make per week and think about how they're buying groceries, how are they buying gas. You know, everything has accelerated so fast in this gear of expense that we were already behind, now we're really behind. The longevity goal payment, I looked this up, had a conversation with somebody, and they said, no, it's not 5 years anymore. It's 3 years. If you're not paying an employee well, they're not going to stay 5 years, okay? And then I want to bring back to your attention, if you all got the booklet when Seaborn and them served on the committee, Casey served on it too. John, what was the name of the committee?
Strategic planning.
The strategic planning results for our county and suggestions clearly stated to pay the employees. They There was a lot of talk at those tables about it with the people there about how our employees are done. Also, there was the word for the commissioners in the county to accept that the officials are a different entity than a department head. And when they get their pay approval, it's for them to disperse in the manner that they see. We're held to that degree. If we do the wrong things, the people are not going to reelect us. And that's the way that's supposed to be done. And I have battled this since I came in to office because I was told by elected officials, Donna, you're not being a team member. We made an agreement. We made an agreement to all of us be as a department. And I said back, I wasn't here to make that agreement, and I'm going to do exactly what the CTAS manual says, because that's the only thing I have for liability to support me if something goes wrong. So 10 years of skipping every other year, and also putting it off to where the employee didn't get the raise on that year until after their anniversary date. It was through me and CTAS talking that all this came to a head. And CTAS met, and they brought other superior people in and met with the commissioners. You've got commissioners that have been serving for many, many years, and they've been told and know it was all wrong and that they were supposed to fix it. We're going back to like 2018, okay? And it's going to be 2025. And look, we still haven't done it. 5% is nothing when they've been getting 2% or 3% at the most, and no cost of living. So I just beg of you to really stand up and charge forward with a good answer to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. See, I know we're a little out of order here in taking our phone call early. We've done our public comments, the minutes. Did everyone get a chance to look over the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a motion to approve our minutes from the May 13th meeting?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have that there was no old business, and the new business would be our subcommittee updates, since we have already spoken with Mr. Thompson. I really think the only update, and Heather, I did see your email traffic, that we have sent along our recommendation for the longevity pay.
Right.
Okay, and was there anything else?
That was it.
I think that was
That's it.
it, other than the call. Okay, great. Our next meeting is June the 3rd. Today we did meet earlier at 4 o'clock, but our next meeting will be Monday, June 3rd at 4:30.
4:30. Okay.
4:30. All right. Well, unless anyone has any more comments?
Yeah, I wanna make a
questions?
comment.
Yes, sir, please.
I totally agree with John and Donna. The 5%'s nothing, because the employee's been way underpaid for many years. I think, like they mentioned, 12-15% would be good. And I still don't think the longevity pay, I'd rather see it go as a pay raise instead of, because $300 is not gonna retain me for up to 14 years. It ain't gonna do it. Like I said, I'd rather see a good pay raise this time, because we've left the employees behind for a long time.
Well, what it costs to fund that longevity pay is not gonna, you can do both. It's not gonna break the bank funding that longevity pay, so there's no reason why you can't do both.
I don't think the commissioners will go for both, though. We got too many on there that's gonna vote no for a 5% raise.
Well, they shouldn't. I mean, and I agree, I think it'll be a little more, I think it should be more than 5%. But we can fund, you can fund both. I don't see reasons why we can't. So,
be something on the table that makes everybody feel good for the employees and not take care of them on their per hour.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, and they shouldn't. Cause like I said, this is an addition. Still got, we need to do the raises and the problem. But this is just an addition to go along with that. That,
With
I
their
don't know if that
hourly.
makes sense, but, yeah.
I have one last comment. Yes. And it goes back to the salary survey, a salary study. And I wasn't saying that that's something that I want either, but I just needed I think it's important to hear information because I wondered, how do you keep, these, pay studies, how do you keep them balanced over 2 years? How do we not get where we are in the future if we were to have some sort of structure? I mean, the way I look at it now, what I heard from him, this is a very involved structure. There are a lot of considerations that I had not thought of, and I don't know that I'm
Took some
qualified
notes.
to make a comment on. So to me, it seems like we're kind of at a crossroads. You do this, and I'm not saying I'm for it, or you say, okay, department heads, just submit your best offer. Just submit what you think it is. I'm not saying it's a yes, I'm not saying it's no, and I don't know that if the county can fund that, but, I mean, am I missing something?
I don't think so, and I think actually it could be a mix of both, like looking at, and I'm so glad that you coordinated that phone call, because I too had nothing to do with it. It was so foreign to me, I had no idea. So it was really great to ask the questions, find out some more information. And you're right, a lot did go into it. But I think it could potentially be a mix of both. Look at the salary study that occurred in 2014 and check some updated, like some offices have done. Do your due diligence, department heads, as many have done, and maybe, yes, submit your best budget. What you feel they should do, again, yes, putting it back into the department heads, and we could do our best to see what we could do to take care of everyone, and while also planning a way ahead. I mean, would they want to do that every year? Because I know part of our goal was to, create a rubric and, how we're gonna go about pay in the future. So I think, and I've told everyone, I think we're making good strides, but I do think it's gonna take a little bit longer than what was initially projected, I think.
Yeah, talking about your, that salary study. It would only ever work if you did it, implemented it, and like he said, updated every 2 years for, 6, 7, or 8 years, and then redo another one. And you gotta be committed to it. And I think that's probably one of the reasons he has more cities than counties, because maybe cities change, or counties change commissioners more. I don't think our commission would do that, would hold it, would, being on we changed,
Be on that
would
schedule.
stay on that schedule and stay committed to keeping it updated, doing this, doing that,
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, and yeah, it's a lot of money, and yeah, and that's what I'm saying, I just don't think the commission would do that, would stay committed to it.
I have 2 of those salary studies in my office, so I could.
And they didn't stay committed to it then. We didn't stay, we didn't stay committed to it then, so.
But understand this, of all these years when we've had these salary studies, nobody has implemented. In fact, Holly, they were thrown in the garbage. Now, I put mine in binders, and I think John did, and she probably has some, but if you take those right now and compare those to the payroll, it's going to look really bad, because they were already under those studies. That's why the commission never followed through with them. So why go pay for something that's gonna show you you're way out of bounds? And the commissioners are not gonna vote to pay the people what that study says. They haven't before, they won't now. So there is a big concern. I don't think that they'll do that.
They didn't want to give the bonuses promised either,
No.
that I brought up in January, that's trying to make a deal and cut it down. And I
Yeah,
think I think the bonus is promised for the next 2 years also. I need to look at those minutes and see, because we all agreed to pass it, and I'm gonna look it up and bring it up.
And so how do we get where we are right now is because we've had a lot of the commissioners run again and again, and they've been here. And I don't know how that set of mind gets changed. The new commissioners coming in may have a wall they're gonna hit. But we've got to work on it, and I will come back to every meeting, and I will bring those salary studies, and I'll make you a copy, and you meet with Heather and see where these people fell back in, I think the last study was 2020, 2019,
2021, I think.
2021. And then there was a prior to that, and then there's one by the state that has all of the counties in it. That's our most valuable right there, because we know our competitive counties. We know we're in the I-24 corridor. We know that we're an industrial town. There's all these factors that you can bank on that we are just very comparable to Loudoun, to Roane, to Dixon. I mean, that's what we're comparable to. CTAS helped me a lot on putting that together. And there was a lot of time spent on that information. I'm sorry. I didn't know you need to leave. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay. But this is important. This is people's livelihoods. It is their household. It is their means of survival. And I've got a couple in my office that are not surviving unless they get help from others. Okay. I'm sorry to hold you.
Hopefully we can do it this year.
Yes, we're gonna do our best. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Thank you.
You gotta leave.
Did you say? I'm sorry, my child had surgery. I some Medicaid.
See you the third.